Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddham Dhammam Sangham Namasami. Good morning, dear friends, and welcome to this Friday morning monk chat at the Empty Cloud Monastery here in New Jersey. While we're waiting for some questions to come in, I would be willing to take a question from the room.
Can you please talk about how to develop metta for oneself?
The question was about how to develop metta for oneself. First of all, we can remember the story of Malika and King Bimbisara. Do you know that story? So the king and his wife were very much in love. It was a true match. On one occasion, he asked her, darling, who do you love better, yourself or me? And she said, oh, great king, to be honest, I love myself the more, and then I love you. And this was actually a very realistic kind of an answer. And you could think of it in terms of the natural emotional reactions that a person has that get them through everyday life. So when you see, if you feel hungry and you see some delicious food being offered, you feel very happy, and your mouth may start to salivate and your stomach may start to rumble. And those reactions is because, at least at the body level, you want to take care of yourself, and you're so glad that you will be able to take care of that hunger. In many other cases, at like a simple materialistic level, you can see how a person naturally takes care of themselves. You may see how, in terms of the perspective or point of view, a person naturally gives a priority to their own perspective as opposed to looking at another person's perspective. Or they can see, naturally, it seems like their own feelings are more important than other people's feelings. So this is not anything high quality, good, virtuous. It's just kind of a characteristic that we have in nature. But we can use what we have naturally and make that a stepping stone to develop the spiritual quality of metta, including oneself as for all as for oneself. The teaching about having metta for yourself is given in the Path of Purification of Buddhaghosa, where he speaks about the extending metta for the four kinds of persons. But in the sutta, it doesn't really speak like saying, if you have this problem that you hate yourself, you should develop kindness for yourself. That's not really stated explicitly. Instead, it's more often stated as if it were completely natural, that any natural person would immediately understand that they will take care of themselves and that they will be kind to themselves. And then the extension or the effort is to look on others the same as for oneself. So starting with what you naturally, the natural care for yourself, then you want to also develop yourself spiritually developing the Dhamma until your self view and your self preference washes away, and you're able to um, naturally extend loving kindness for others the same as for oneself. So there are many reflections that have this idea of self and others together as a pair. Like if you reflect upon a karma that you did to see whether it was skillful or not skillful, you could say, is this action that I did, or these words that I speak, is that harmful to myself? Is it harmful to another, or is it harmful to both? And if any of those three statements are true, then you should not do it. So if it's beneficial to another but harmful to oneself, you should not do it. But if all three of those statements are false, it doesn't harm you, it doesn't harm the other, it doesn't harm both, then you may go ahead and do that action. There's another approach to developing kindness to oneself that I learned from Bhante Sujato, and that is in using the four-person method. If you find that one of the meditations is actually difficult to cultivate in the sense that you feel more restless and the mind does not easily remain with the thought of loving kindness for that person. If you have a tendency of losing the meditation or becoming distracted, then you may realize that there's some hindrance that's blocking you from extending loving kindness for that person or for that kind of person. So if you can't find it easy to develop metta for yourself in meditation, you got to investigate and see what's blocking you, what the hindrance is. One hindrance that might arise is a feeling that I don't deserve happiness, having like low self-esteem. If that's the case, I find it helpful to combine the self-love and the altruism together into a single idea. And I do this reflection, whatever benefit or gain that I obtain from practicing this meditation, may I use that improvement in me for the benefit of all beings. So even feeling like it would be selfish for me to want to get happiness for myself, I make the promise, as soon as I get this happiness, I'm going to be giving it back. So it's going to keep on circulating, and that overcomes the strong programming I had that it's wrong to be selfish, or the feeling that I shouldn't get that happiness. If it's actually a feeling of not being worthy, then just reflecting on your own deeds, reflecting on your own sila, using the contemplation of sila as a way to lift up the mind by remembering things that you did, that you intentionally, you meant well, you did best, you made the effort, and even in past lives, you must have done a lot of good deeds to be born in this lifetime as a human being with enough intelligence to hear the Dhamma. And so those are a couple of ideas, but if somebody has a difficulty with cultivating loving kindness for their own self, they should do their own investigation and find out what's actually true for themselves and see if they can try some antidote to overcome that block. And it's your own creative work to discover what works for you, not what works for somebody else. Welcome to Matt, Gregory, Rebecca, Manal, Ryan. How's our friend, Rebecca? Here's a question from Tumak. Work is an ongoing source of stress. It even keeps me up at night. My mind and thoughts are anxious and ill will. It challenges my practice. I know some of it is my own making. How can I boost my practice? Well, you're not alone in finding work to be a source of stress. Uh, one of the jobs that I have at the moment is being the abbot here at this monastery. Um, I had left another community where I was the vice abbot, and I had a very delightful several months of just being a bhikkhuni without having that particular kind of job, focusing on the Dhamma and focusing on practice and focusing on study and really enjoying that interval. And then after accepting that responsibility, even though the work was good, the work is virtuous, the people are nice, the people are all sharing the same values, everything about this should be like an ideal kind of job. And nevertheless, it was very stressful to face, um, the different deadlines and performance anxiety and all different things like that. And being obliged to speak to many different people, where it would be my preference to associate with a small number of people. So then, uh, dukkha is to be fully understood according to the Buddha. So if you are able to actually study yourself, study your own mind, and see if you can identify what it is about the work that's stressful, and that may help you decide what to do about it. It could be that for some things it's just inevitable, and a person needs to become more tolerant about unpleasant feeling. So if you say working on under a deadline is unpleasant, but deadlines are inescapable. We can't live without deadlines. Therefore, I could just decide to do my best to tolerate the unpleasant feeling associated with deadlines. You may see that um, just by reframing the experience as being this is an unpleasant feeling already takes away some of the stress level, because it doesn't say that, like, I'm bad, I'm weak, I'm anxious, or something like that, not a statement about putting a label on myself, but instead seeing it as a Vedana, a feeling, and um, uh, with the understanding that pleasant and unpleasant feelings are inevitable, and it's an advantage, a great advantage to learn how to cope with both the ups and the downs without getting too excited and without grasping. Uh, Other kinds of stress might be um, coming from uh, associating with people who don't share the same values, who might even be pressuring you to do something which is opposite to your practice, or even in work situations, sometimes there can be a pressure to do something unethical or something that's a little bit shady as far as ethics. And in that case, it's really beneficial to have a very clear analysis. And there's one of the suttas says, um, it gives this reflection: other people kill, but I do not kill. Other people steal, but I do not steal. Other people tell lies, but I do not tell lies. This sutta sounds like very egocentric to be making those kind of statements, but actually, this is a declaration of freedom. that just because other people kill, steal, and tell lies doesn't mean that I have to be like that. So to understand that uh, you have the freedom and the right to take charge of your own karma and to make the choices that you're going to make about how to behave. And then having that clarity, it doesn't need to be adversarial, it doesn't need to be aggressive. If you could simply, just be able to say in a calm voice, well, for me, honesty is the best policy. And nobody can argue with that. So then um, that's another way to take the stress out of work. Seclusion is recommended by the Buddha, and seclusion means getting away from the busyness and the stress and the high level of activity of work and associating and having contacts with many different people, with lots of different conversations, different noises, different things, different projects, different duties, different responsibilities, having a to-do list that's as long as both arms and both legs put together. Um, that's a busyness. So it's very beneficial to know how to, during the meditation time, to set down those distractions and to become secluded so that during meditation time, you're not going to worry about the past and the future, and you're um, not associating with anybody else, but only looking within to discover what's going on with your own five khandhas, and that quietness, that seclusion, is so healing. It's so beneficial. It even, uh, I think, physically allows healing to take place in the body, and it allows um, the repetitive ruts in the mind from worrying about problems to have some time to naturally recover and heal. So when you have free time, when you have leisure, don't use it with something distracting like scrolling through social media, but use that time to truly take your bright moments of mindfulness and seclusion. Um, find time, if you can, to be with nature or to be in a calm and quiet place to give yourself that seclusion. That's my suggestion there. Yeah. Dear Aya, uh, uh, is the self a figment, I'll say a figment of our imagination? Yes, it is. Uh, it's something that is a phenomenon um, generated by thinking. So it's a very natural part of the process of consciousness to be directed towards objects. And when consciousness experiences an object, it experiences one thing. Okay, here's one thing, and it experiences the one thing having compactness, meaning that all the different parts of that one thing belong to that one thing. That's compactness. And it also has edges, meaning you can tell the difference between what is part of that one thing and what's outside of that one thing. That's what consciousness does when you know something. And then when you perceive it, you make a connection to memory, like you know what the name is, or you know what the purpose of that one thing is. So you naturally do this all day long, and you also do it with your own self. And it creates that, like everything that the mind makes to be the inside, that this is me and something else is not me, um, that becomes the self. But it's a it's a construction, it's a fabrication, it's a complicated um, phenomenon with many different pieces and parts, which is continuously changing throughout time. If you practice meditation, you may be able to see actually many different kinds of objects as falling apart because of impermanence. And then you also could be able to experience what you ordinarily experience as yourself falling apart within the meditation. And then if something happens and you need to get up and do something, you may see that all the pieces and parts of the self magically comes together. You can make a cartoon about this, couldn't you? That, the parts of the body like are scattered all over the beach or something like that. And then the bell rings for lunch and you've got to get up and go to lunch. So all the parts, they all get together, assemble themselves and run to lunch. And so this is what happens. The mind creates the self constantly, but you can disidentify from this what the mind is doing. So the mind is making a self, but don't worry, it's not a problem. It's just what the mind does. And as far as at like a higher level, you could say it's not me. It's just an activity of the mind. It's not me. It's not mine. Not myself. When and for who is it appropriate to teach the Dhamma? Uh, in the Sekhiya rules of the Vinaya that applies to monks and nuns, they give some very detailed instructions of not teaching the Dhamma to somebody who's um, basically who's disrespectful or who's not ready to hear the Dhamma. So we are not supposed to teach Dhamma to somebody who's wearing a hat, to somebody who's wearing shoes, to somebody who's carrying a weapon, uh, or to, if we're sitting, we're not supposed to teach Dhamma to somebody who's lying down, and so on and so on. It goes on in some detail. But the main gist of it is that in the traditional Indian culture, um, those postures would be representing somebody who is not respectful of the Dhamma. In other words, not ready to hear the Dhamma, not prepared to hear the Dhamma. So uh, we can generalize this for anybody, including a layperson speaking about the Dhamma among their friends. If people are not desiring, interested, willing, and open-minded to hear the Dhamma, then it's kind of useless to speak about it. On the other hand, having dialogue with people who have doubts and questions can be extremely fruitful. And in that case, because they have doubts and questions, they're not yet able to accept the entire Dhamma. They're looking for some explanations to find out like which aspect of the Dhamma they're capable of understanding. So somebody like that might be able to understand loving kindness, but they might not be able to understand Nibbana. And in that case, it's very fruitful and beneficial to speak about things that a person is able to understand. It's also suitable to teach about the Dhamma when you understand it yourself, or when you have a basis in your direct experience of the meaning and the significance of the teachings that are passed down by this tradition as the teachings of the Buddha. Or even if you don't have direct experiential knowledge, if you at least have got confirmed faith in the teachings of the Buddha, and or even if you have provisional faith, if you've got some amount of faith and confidence that this path is effective, that this is beneficial, and that this is the path that you yourself are working on, then you can speak in a way that's very honest about what you know for yourself, what you accept on faith, uh, so that you can be authentic with your own experience. And it's very suitable to speak sincerely about the Dhamma, even when your own direct experience of the Dhamma may not yet be completely fulfilled. In Bhikkhu Bodhi's translation of the Mahavingala Sutta, what is meant by the phrase signless deliverance of the mind? So I always refer to a particular, I'm going to call it up, there's a particular article I want to refer you to that's got the best explanation of the different kinds of deliverance of the mind. The name of the article is Types of Vimutti, and it was written by a scholar named Lily de Silva in the Pali Buddhist Review in 1978. It's readily available online. The exact title of this article is Chaito Vimutti, Panya Vimutti, and Ubhatobhaga Vimutti by Lily de Silva. So let me see. I'm going to go to the banner, and I'm going to create a banner that says Vimutti. Okay, so the article by Lily de Silva about Vimutti. So the signless liberation of the mind is when, in particular, if a person is contemplating non-self, if you have the delusion of self, this is so fitting with the previous questions. If you have the delusion of self, you will have the delusion that many different kinds of objects, including your own self and including the other persons and beings in the world, and including other kinds of objects, as possessing an essence which is eternal. Like I mentioned with this object has the quality of compactness, meaning all of the different parts of this object all have the identity of being parts of a glass of water. And so that when you contemplate non-self, the perception of that pure eternal essence of your own self or of any other object that the mind turns towards dissolves and falls apart. And so all of the things you experience are like a flow, an ever-flowing river of changing elements. And so then it's the opposite when you, the sign is called a nimitta, and that means you saw an object which is filled with thousands and thousands and thousands of details, and you picked out one are a couple of distinct signs that represent to you what that object is about. So if I see one person here, they're wearing a brown robe, and I recognize that's a bhikkhuni because they have the sign of a bhikkhuni. And somebody else is wearing a white robe, and I can say, oh, that's an anagarika because they have the sign of the anagarika. So the mind, which is tied up in signs, always identifies things by their signs and gets trapped in the sign. But when you cultivate emptiness, or you cultivate the non-self within regarding your own self, and you regard emptiness regarding all phenomenon, then you no longer are clinging or attached or getting your mind locked up on those signs. And instead of just seeing signs, you see just the flow of phenomenon. And then that dissolves into the signlessness. And so then that is a very a blissful kind of meditation. It's not nibbana, but it's a very blissful kind of meditation, and it's a very helpful kind of meditation to have a deep, profound experience of the disappearance of all those signs that the mind used to be attached to. And that also conditions the mind for awakening. Okay, good. The questions are piling up. I'll try to budget my time. One in a position of responsibility must often make decisions that will have a negative impact on others, especially if they are not behaving well. How should one practice avoiding harm to others then? Um, the I think it's very useful to have this clarity about the distinction between an unpleasant feeling and harm. So if you give medicine to a baby and the medicine is bitter, that's an unpleasant feeling, but it's not a harm. If your child is misbehaving, you've got a very strategic choice to make. You could, in a very kind and gentle way, divert that child away from their bad behavior and towards something positive. And that's a very lovely, beautiful kind of parenting that is avoiding conflict as much as possible, or avoiding creating actually creating aversion as much as possible, trying to protect that child from like if a child feels like they are aversive or they hate their parent because the parent is scolding them and it stirs up anger or something like that, that is like stirring up something that's that actually is harmful. And so as a considerate parent, you would like realize that even though you mean well, the child could take your scolding the wrong way and could develop a habit of anger or a habit of hatred, something like that. But then it's still true that sometimes you've got to speak very sharp, either because in this example your child is not able to hear you, but you really need them to be able to hear you, or it could be because there's some imminent danger and that you're going to prevent them from some greater danger by speaking sharply, or even by grabbing them and pulling them away from the fire. And in that case, you've got to basically rely on the discernment about what's necessary, and also rely on the purity of your own motive. that you're not doing something to your child because you feel angry or because you feel ashamed or because you feel um, any kind of afflictive emotional reaction, but instead you're behaving in a way that's got the pure intention as much as possible for their welfare, for their happiness. And and then even if your child, or let's say if this is at work, your employee, um, they could feel an unpleasant feeling, but when they think it over, they may realize, oh, um, my father meant well. Even though he made mistakes, I know he meant well. He was doing his best. And with the boss, if the employees realize, even if the boss sometimes makes a mistake, the boss means well and is doing his best and not trying to hurt us. Um, that uh, that's the way to do it. Uh, if you are in a job that requires doing a moral injury to people, let's say if you're a politician and you feel you must vote in favor of waging war, uh, I would recommend uh, not taking that kind of job. Or if you do take that job, say that you're going to be a pacifist politician who will never vote for waging war, or you'll be the kind of politician that will never approve of capital punishment, or something like that. So uh, there's doing something that's violating your own precept or encouraging others to violate the precept is a harmful thing that should always be avoided. And as well, um, for us as monks or for somebody who's a Dhamma speaker, even as a layperson, misrepresenting the teachings of the Buddha is a danger that you should always avoid doing. So if you say, actually, the Buddha approves of killing a communist, don't say that. There was a famous incident, somebody said that, but don't say that because it's not true, and it's a really a negative, creating a negative of something for yourself. Um, um, Also being aware of causation. So, like, there's many harms happening because of nature. Uh, Say if somebody's a physician and the illness and death is happening to people because of nature, and a physician can mitigate some of it, but they're not able to completely mitigate every illness. They're not able to mitigate or prevent every death. Uh, and one medicine will have some negative side effects. And so they're always making choices, which does have side effects that are um, adverse to the health of the body, but they're, thinking in terms of what's truly beneficial for the person, and making the best choice they can, knowing that sometimes they're not always able to make perfect choices, but always have to make the choice that's for the best moral and spiritual benefit and welfare of the entire person. Dear, will you ever going cold turkey on coffee and social media? I'm looking at cutting away from these attachments. Thank you very much. Well, during a time of seclusion, uh, going cold turkey on social media would be a good thing. It does happen sometimes that a person, being a Dhamma messenger or being somebody for whom communication is part of their vocation in life, sometimes a person is using social media as part of their choice in communication, and so that's a tricky choice. Um, uh, in a case like that, I would strongly recommend putting a definite, powerful boundary around social media use. As somebody, because of your work or your vocation, you must use social media. If you say, between 9 o'clock and 9:20 in the morning, I'll use social media and not other times of the day. Um, and uh, uh, likewise, if your job means that you're concerned about, um, or your vocation in life means that you're concerned about current events, news in the world, and all of the sufferings and ills of society, then sometimes you might be using social media in order to find out about the ills of society. Um, I heard a story, we're not supposed to monks don't look at entertainment. I heard a story of a monk who came from an Asian country to America, and he was visiting uh, a home where there was a television set. This was in the old days; they didn't have computers in those days, and he wanted to be shown the most horrible movies about, like, movies about gangs and police and cowboys and Indians and wars and all things like that. And he also wanted to see movies about sex and romance. And the reason he gave was he wanted to know about American culture, and he wanted to find out the worst. So he was exposing himself to media after being very mature and well developed in his practice to find out what the everyday person is facing. Um, so you can see how that's in a defined thing, but going cold turkey in terms of, if you can, go cold turkey, or if you can't, put a very strong boundary on social media, and in addition to that, take periods of seclusion, whether it be the weekend or the uh, uh, your something on the clock, or the times that you're on retreat, that you're definitely going cold turkey on social media. And then similarly with, caffeine is a medicine, and uh, some traditions disapprove of the use of caffeine. Other monk traditions do approve it, especially when the monks do all-night meditations. Um, Sometimes they use medicine to help them stay awake, but it's a perfectly uh, legitimate and a good uh, choice to uh, uh, take the caffeine out of one's life, and uh, whether it's cold turkey or tapering off, it's up to you. But coffee is not really that morally important. Um, it's more like a health question. But social media is definitely a moral issue. Tumak is appreciating that I'm taking on all these duties at the monastery. Yes, you're welcome. Is there time today? You can give an update what is happening currently with the monastery building projects. Okay, well, it's a question. It's not a Dhamma question. Uh, so at the moment, we have, for several months now, we've gotten the roof repaired and the leaks in the basement repaired and the library fixed up, and the different spaces cleaned. And we've placed the statues that were donated a few years ago around the yard. Um, we are we've received a generous gift that allows us to do the rest of our renovations. So we have those things in mind to do. Um, the completion of some repairs to the chapel to make that completely waterproof is upcoming. But we've completed installing the air conditioning to make the chapel comfortable in the summertime. We've got an upcoming project to do a minor repair on the heat system that will make the chapel comfortable in the wintertime. And we have a beautiful project to build an architect is helping us to build a beautiful Dhammachaka, which can replace the cross at the top of the steeple of our chapel. And that's also underway. So we're hoping that those things can be well completed in the next few months. Um, uh, those are the uh, major repairs that I have in mind at the moment that are upcoming with the chapel, but with the monastery as a whole. Um, this is a very old building, and there was a lot of deferred maintenance on this old building. Oh, windows as well. The old window frames on this building, many of them have the wood is decomposed, and so this is an upcoming major project to uh, replace those historical antique windows with their unique shapes and their unique stained glass windows, as well as uh, there's one room that's got windows on two sides and a pillar holding up that corner with a heavy stone structure above. It's at the moment being propped up some temporary metal supports, but that structure will be replaced. Um, and there was another structure behind where we had a wooden structure that was upholding a stone part of the building, which was also decomposing and decaying. And our volunteers, it's so incredible what volunteers can do. They replaced this massive wooden beam with a new massive wooden beam without damaging the heavy stone and brick structure above it. It's incredible that without spending tens of thousands of dollars, we were able to accomplish some of these things. And so there's a bit of like finishing up to restore that section to its beautiful historical appearances. So those are some of the things that are happening currently with the monastery building projects. More questions, practical questions. Where is Ayurveda? He is in Italy at the Empty Cloud Italia, and he might be giving talks in Italian these days. Let me see. I'll open up the website for Empty Cloud Italia, and here's Italy. I will add a okay, so you go to this site, emptyclouditalia.org, and you may catch up with Ayurveda and any talks that he may have published over there. Confirmed faith and provisional faith. Right. I misspoke when I said confirmed faith. So the confirmed faith is one of the synonyms for enlightenment. So a person, an enlightened arhat, has got uh, unshakable liberation, meaning their faith is fully confirmed by experience. There's no possibility of any doubt whatsoever. And so that's a confirmed faith. And then I will say provisional faith is one is not yet an arhat or even not yet having any noble attainments, but nevertheless, you've heard the word of the Buddha, and it seems like a good idea. And you've encountered some Dhamma teachings or studied the life of the Buddha and reached a reasonable conclusion. These teachers are ethical. These teachers are honest. These teachers are not hypocrites. They act in accord with what they say, and they speak in accord with what they act. Their behavior is consistent in private or in public, whether they be not famous or whether they become famous. They don't become arrogant and proud. And so you see these good qualities in the teacher. So these things are adding to your faith. So you get a little provisional faith because the Dhamma seems like a good idea and the teacher seems like a good person. And then you may hear the Dhamma and memorize the Dhamma. And when you've memorized it, then you can try it out for yourself. Then you try meditation. You try improving your sila. You try cultivating mindfulness in all the postures. You try cultivating loving kindness. And then when you try out these different practices, then you notice that you're getting happier and that your social problems are going away, your remorse is going away. So that's increasing your faith. And then it could be that on some particular moment, you realize uh, partial cessation of dukkha. In the Four Noble Truths, there's dukkha, the cause of dukkha, and the cessation of dukkha. So there's something that you were suffering with. You saw something that you had been clinging to that was causing your suffering, and you discovered that you able to stop clinging to that thing. And when you stop clinging, you realize a tremendous breakthrough of the cessation of suffering. So even if you only let go of $1 worth of clinging, you definitely experienced much more than $1 worth of relief of suffering. Even though you haven't completed the entire path, you have that breakthrough of, to that degree, your faith is confirmed because the system seems to work, and then you're motivated. You want to practice this Noble Eightfold Path to see, well, um, you're able to reduce your suffering by 50% by following this path. What if I followed the entire path? Could I limit it to 100%? And so that's what I mean by provisional faith. So we've come to the end of our time. I thank you all for your patient listening, and we can close by saying all together, Sadhu, Sadhu, Sadhu.